because what you are here for is also an event that I've been very closely involved in, particularly because of my friendships with Dan and Phil, but even more with Dean Hammer, who was for many years at the divinity school, or at least 2 years, I say many years, 2 years. And ever since that time, we have remained very close in touch. And he started to form the Covenant Peace Community in New Haven. And I have a sense that our prayers together, which were prayers with a great intensity, have a lot to do with why we are here. A growing sense of Eucharist, I must say. Dean and Chris and Art, Bob, and all those who are part of that community have come to love the Eucharist more and more as the years pass by, and have come to root all their actions into a very deep spirit of thanksgiving. I don't think that Dean will ever speak about civil disobedience or about protest or about struggling against the arms race without, at some point, talking about the Eucharist as the source of his action. And he has come to understand in a very deep and profound way those intimate connections between prayer and resistance. He and his friends, I think all the friends of the Plowshare 8, have come to understand that prayer is a form of protest, and that protest is a form of prayer. And that resistance and prayer are very intimately connected. And because of that, I would like to read you a passage from Scripture today and reflect with you on that for some time. I invite you to listen to that as a meditation, and maybe you can make your connections as we reflect on this scripture passage. Looking up, Jesus saw the crowds approaching and said to Philip, "Where can we buy some bread for these people to eat?" Now, he only said this to test Philip. He himself knew exactly what he was going to do. Philip answered, 200 denarii now would only be enough to give them a small piece each. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said, "There is a small boy here with 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But what is that between so many?" But Jesus said to them, "Make the people sit down." And then Jesus took the loaves, gave thanks, and gave them out to all who were sitting ready. He then did the same with the fish, giving out as many as was wanted. And when they had eaten enough, he said to his disciples, "Pick up the pieces left over so that nothing gets wasted." So they picked them up and filled 12 hampers with scraps left over from the meal of 5 barley loaves. The people, seeing this sign he had given, said, "This really is the prophet who is to come into the world." I want to reflect a little bit with you on these words, because they might help us to come to terms, a little bit at least, with all the things that we are about right now and that we are struggling with. And I'd like to just go through it a little bit and express to you how this can be translated into our times. Looking up, Jesus saw the crowds approaching, and said to Philip, "Where can we buy some bread for these people to eat?" Now, he only said this to test Philip. And Philip answered, 200 denarii would only buy enough to give them a small piece each. Now, I want you to get a sense of that spirit there. Imagine all those people who sitting there, thousands of them. And Philip is the realist, so to say. He knows to count. He's able to divide up and to say, well, 200 denarii. That's all. That's what we always say. That's what we always say. There isn't enough for everybody. There isn't enough. Now, you can count. Look, this is what we have. This is the many people, and it doesn't fit. We call this the scarcity principle. The scarcity principle is a way of thinking that is extremely logical, but absolutely wrong. It's the way of thinking in which you say, there is only so much, and if I'm going to give a part of that away, I'm going to have less. Okay? There's only so much food, there's only so much knowledge, there's only so much affection and love and care, and not enough for everybody. Look, can't you count? Can't you see? Now, I have just this little bit. And what I'm going to do, which makes an enormous amount of sense, I'm going to hang on to what I have because at least I want to survive. After all, if there is a choice, who should survive but me? And I have something. It's not a lot, but I have something. I'm going to hang on to it. Look, if I'm going to divide it up, then I'm going to die and everybody else is going to die, and what does that help? Because it's only a little piece and I cannot feed. And listen, I know only so much. I've only studied so long, and I'm not going to tell everybody immediately what I know, because then I don't have enough to say the rest of the year. So when I'm going to give a class, I'm not going to tell everything the first day. And the only book that I use, nobody else is going to use. I'm going to hold on to that little bit of knowledge I have, and I'm going to divide it up, so that at least I can stretch it out to the end of the semester. And listen, there's only so much affection you can get. I have this very close friend, and we really care for each other. and we really love for each other. Now I know that he also likes him. But if I keep inviting him, he's going to run off with him, and then I'm sitting here alone. There's only so much affection. And I'll be very careful if I get him in, and her, and them, and invite them all to the house, and he's such a nice man, and she's such a beautiful woman, and if I'm going to invite them, and they're going to fall in love with him too, and I'm sitting here crying after a while. And that is very logical. There's only so much. And you better hang on to what you have and be very careful. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to realize that if I'm going to hang on what I have, all the rest of the people are obviously looking at me with some jealousy. Okay? Because he's holding on to it. You see, he has a lot, and why does he give it up? I know he has more than we. So, and I know they're looking at me. They see me with those 5 loaves, and I keep on to it. And I know that they want a piece of it. And because they want a piece of it, I call them my enemies. My enemies are those who want a piece of what I have. If I didn't have anything, I wouldn't have enemies, because enemies are only interested in part of what I have. An enemy is something I define. An enemy is the one that I perceive as wanting to have something that I have and don't want to give up. I define my enemy. I make my enemies precisely because the enemy is the one who I perceive as a threat, as something who's going to take something from me. And since there are so many enemies, because obviously there are so many people who have less than I have, I know that I have a lot of hostility around me. But I'm not going to give it up. And I'm going to get very angry at everybody who is trying to get a piece. And I'm going to be a relatively hostile person, because after all, that is what I need to be in order to keep that little bit what I have and to survive. And if I'm angry long enough and hostile and have no longer chance to blast it out, then okay, I'll let that anger sit there and sit there 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, and from hot anger it becomes cold anger, and cold anger we call resentment. And resentment perceives our world and pervades it. And resentment, suspicion, anger, hostility, holding on because there is not enough for everyone. Now, I know it's a parable, as you know, and I realize that I hope you make connections I don't have to make. I hope you see that that is true on all sort of levels. Individual, national, international, and so forth. That somewhere we have come to believe that the world is not big enough for everyone, and there is not enough food, not enough love, not enough charity, not enough care, not enough knowledge, and what we have we better hang on to. Now, one of the disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said, there is a small boy here with 5 barley loaves and 2